So we started yesterday dealing with the halakha. We got sidetracked, which is not to do anything while you make a blessing. And that's not drying your hands, it's not cutting the bread, it's not pre-slicing the bread, it's not pouring salt in the bread. We don't do anything while we make a bracha. Now we're in halakha hey, on page 340. B'Shabbat, on Shabbat, shetzarich liftzua lechem mishneh, when you have to make a blessing on lechem mishneh. What is lechem mishneh? Double. Meaning mishneh, you're always going to find mishneh is used in a few different ways. Mishneh can be like the Mishneh Torah. What's the original? Not Rambam. What's the original Mishneh Torah? The book of Devarim, the last of the Chumash, is known as the Mishneh. It's a review of the Torah. Meaning it's a second Torah almost. It's like, and often those who like to make fancy drashot, they compare the way something is written in the first 4 Chumashim compared to the 5th Chumash. That's often done. You then have Mishneh Torah like the Rambam. It's essentially he's using that word because it's a review of the written and oral laws together. You also find the word Mishneh, like Mishneh LeMelech Achashverosh. You find that he's the advisor, the second in command to the king of Achashverosh. You find the word Mishneh. Yeah? Always second, 2, Mishneh, review. Shanu Chachamim Bilshon HaMishnah. The sages reviewed their teachings in the language of the Mishnah. I mean, they're rewriting the Mishnah. Mishnah is again second. It's a way to review. So here you need to have 2 breads for Shabbat. That's called lechem mishneh. Some people say lechem mishnah. Mishnah is a mishnah. Mishneh is a mishnah. Yeah, don't confuse that. The hainu shivtzal shnei kikarot lechem shlemim. That a person has to make a hamotzi on Shabbat on 2 rolls of bread or loaves of bread or breads that are whole. So the chatchila, ideally on Shabbat, and here's the second attack on the minhag of pre-slicing the bread. Look. Lo yachto chapat elachar shesiyam habracha. On Shabbat, you should not make that slice in the bread before you make hamotzi. Why?
No longer shalom.
Yeah, because it takes away from the shlemut. It takes away from the wholeness of the bread. I mean, that which Maran says to make a slice first is talking about a weekday. But on Shabbat, where you should have 2 whole loaves of bread, you shouldn't pre-cut the bread. מפני שיש לחוש שמא תשמט ידו קודם שזה מהברכה ולא יהיו 2 קירות שלמים ובדיעבד אם חתך יקרה בשבת כמו בחול אין בכך כלום. And we're afraid that maybe he'll cut too much, he'll move his hand and the bread will fall apart or whatever will happen and then it won't be complete bread. But if you already did it on Shabbat, you because you're so used to making that slice during the week and it happened, there's no big deal. Nothing bad actually happened.
It's funny, usually that's when you see people make a big show of doing it.
On Shabbat, which is the dafka when you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, whoops.
Let's look at the footnote on the bottom right. Hey. Ken Katvu Tosafot. That's what Tosafot writes. Tosafot Rabbeinu Peretz. Why are there Tosafot and Tosafot of Rabbeinu Peretz? What does the word Tosafot mean?
Like additions.
Additions. Anybody can write a Tosafot. You could write a Tosafot too. So when we say the Tosafot, we mean one thing. But when we say the Tosafot of this one, the Tosafot of that one, is a specific author of the Tosafot. The Mordechai writes שבשבת נכון יותר להחמיר דבר כל המשך טוב. On Shabbat it's proper to be stringent and make a hamotzi before you cut the bread at all. We're afraid you're going to cut in such a way that it won't make the bread whole and then you won't have lechem mishneh, the 2 loaves of bread that you need. Omnam, but, and this is who argues, Beshut Maharam Mirotenburg, the Maharam of Rothenburg. He's the last of the Baalei Tosafot. He writes of a Sefer Tashbet, Talmid Maharam, and in the book of the Tashbet, Mevoar, they explain there, Shemaharam haya choteh chapat av b'Shabbat. That Maharam, he would cut the bread even on Shabbat. Ela shaya nizhar lechtoch be'ofen shemechzik b'katan yalemu agadol. But he would cut it in a minor way, meaning a very small cut, so that if you would lift the bread by the slice, the whole loaf would still come up with it. Vilav hachin, if not such, haveh kiparus, it would be considered sliced bread. Ve'no yechol livitzeh alav b'Shabbat, he would not be able to make a hamotzi on it for Shabbat. So even though he cut it, he was careful not to cut it too much so as not to sever the slice from the bread. Vayin b'Eliyah Rabbah, look at Eliyah Rabbah, Shiv b'Shem Sefer Tashbet and Maram, who quotes also the same Tashbet. He brings a completely different reason for why you shouldn't make a pre-slice on Shabbat. That when you're cutting that little slice, little crumbs fall out of the bread, and it's no longer considered a whole loaf, which is an extreme definition of whole.
Yeah.
Because maybe when you hold the bread, a crumb falls off.
Yeah.
Right? But he's saying it doesn't make a difference that you make only a small cut. Even if you make a little bit of a cut and crumbs fall, it's not a whole loaf anymore. But this directly contradicts what we quoted earlier in the Maharam. So we're having two Maharams contradicting each other. What do you want to say?
What happens if you don't cut it and a little piece falls off? I mean, it doesn't make.
How far do we take Lechem
Yeah.
Mishneh? When we get to Laz of Shabbat, we'll talk about Lechem Mishneh. Here we're going the other direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. והבית יוסף הביא דברי תוספות המרדכי הנ"ל שבשבת תאכל. Maran, he quotes in the Bet Yosef the opinions that say you don't cut it at all before, on Shabbat. וכתב הרמ"א בדרכי משה, and the Rama writes in בדרכי משה, that technical difficulties. שכן אנחנו נוהגים, that's our custom. מיהו אם חתכו קודם קדם מרדכי, דהביא לכם משנה. The Rama agrees with Maran that the custom is not to do the slice on Shabbat. So now those who have that custom have to answer why they have that custom on Shabbat, when both Maran and the Rama say the custom is not to do this on Shabbat. וכן פסק בהגה. והם בפרישה שנראה שהביאים בדעת הרמה שבשבת הם ידקו והשלוח תוכנה אפילו באופן שמיוחד הפורסה יש על כלימו וכתב לדחותו. The Prisha, he argues with the Rama. The Prisha says the Prisha understands the Rama is saying the minhag is not to make any slice at all, and that any slice would destroy the Lechem Mishneh status. From this Prisha we understand that he also holds in the Rama, that the Rama holds that if you would make a pre-slice, it actually would take away at all the status of Lechem. Whereas we're saying it's not a big deal if you made the slice because you forgot. Rama, there are those who interpret the Rama to say if you do that pre-slice on Shabbat, it doesn't count for Lechem Mishneh at all. It could be here that Rama's understanding is a little stricter than Maran's. But most of these other rabbis are of the opinion that Rama doesn't hold that if you do the pre-slice, it doesn't work. Just that he prefers you don't do the pre-slice on Shabbat. Okay, so far what we have is according to Maran and the Rama, on Shabbat, all of the things we mentioned by slicing the bread first don't apply. In fact, it would be better not to do it at all. Page 341, top of the page. ואם חתך הכיכר בשבת באופן שאשים יוחז והרים בידו את הפרוסה לבדה לא יעלה שאר כרם בפרוסה. And if you cut in such a way that it's so deep that if you were to hold the slice, the loaf itself would fall off, יש אומרים שאין זה נחשב יותר לחם משנה. There are those who say that that doesn't count as lechem mishneh anymore. Let's look at the next sentence, it's fascinating. V'yesh nohagim, there is a minhag that exists, that b'Shabbat, lirshom b'sakin me'at rapat, that they cut a tiny little, like a symbolic slice, which we were saying that doesn't fit into the halakha that we read earlier. The reason they do the symbolic slice is only on Shabbat, because they don't want to make an actual cut in the bread. So here we're justifying.
Is a symbolic slice just like a gesture, or it's just like a tiny scratch? Oh, so it's air guitar basically.
Maybe it's a tiny slice, but it's like very minor, which wasn't what Maran was saying in the original halakha. I mean, that we were saying, how does that come? Does that come from here? And then right after hamotzi, they cut the bread in that same spot. This seems to be the minhag that we're seeing now.
It sounds like a marking.
Right. There are those who say to do it. There are those who say not to do it at all. Remember, those who say that the crumbs falling off are a problem will say this will be a problem for the Lechem Mishneh. ובכל הנ"ל, in all of the above cases, הוא הדין לעניין יום טוב שאף בו צריך לפצוע לחם משנה. Even on Yom Tov we have to cut lechem mishneh, and therefore, even on Yom Tov this discussion would apply. Now, how complete does the bread have to be considered complete? It's kind of what you're asking.
Yeah.
Let's give you a scenario where the bread, you have a bread, and half of it is so burned that you can't eat it anymore. Like it's like half charcoal, half challah. Is that a complete loaf, or is that half a loaf that's missing a piece and just still attached to it?
Like more
Whole loaf.
color.
Like shmor challah.
A whole loaf.
Upad shenisraf me'at, bread that was burned in one place, mimena be'ofen shelo yoter lachila, and that place you can't eat anymore. Dat kama poskim shnichshevet lepat shlema ben birkat hamotzi u'ben lechem mishneh b'shabbat. The opinion of a number of poskim is that it counts as a complete loaf, whether it's for hamotzi. Remember, we're always trying to make hamotzi on a whole loaf.
Right.
Whether it's for lechem mishneh, it counts. Yesh chokim, but there are those who argue. You know when this makes a difference is if you're making yourself a sandwich and it's not pre-sliced bread, it's a loaf of bread. You want to make a sandwich? Most people, what they would do is they would slice a bread, they would make the sandwich, and then they would go wash. That's probably what most people would do at home. According to this understanding of the halakha, first you should wash, eat a piece from the whole bread, and then cut up the rest of the bread to make yourself a sandwich. You ideally want to make hamotzi on the most honorable piece of bread, which would be a whole loaf of bread. If it's already sliced, minastam, it's already sliced. You know, like what are you gonna do? You're not gonna glue it back together and then cut it.
You mean during the week?
During the week.
Yeah.
Yes. On page 342.
Question about the burn.
Yes.
Like you said, there's a burn portion on it. Do you have to leave the burn part off, or can you get rid of that?
After you do hamotzi?
Before hamotzi.
Well, that's the problem. Is where that might be considered part of the bread, in which case you don't want to lose out on the bread being whole.
So you shouldn't touch it. What happens if the bread is undercooked?
I like that kind of bread. Nobody else does, but I like that. bread.
But you still notice you like the undercooked pizza too.
Yeah, me too. That's right.
Yeah.
Whenever they make the pizza, my wife, when she used to make challah, they were like black and brown on the outside. I was like, I don't want to eat it. She's like, you're the only crazy person who doesn't like pizza baked. You don't
Oh
like
yeah, for a while we were getting
cooked.
those big loaves that were like very white that you're
Right.
making here, right before you bought the new kind of like.
That's not how
custard.
my wife normally makes her challah. In fact, when my family was here, what is this, raw challah? There's a guy like that, you know, the guy.
Welcome.
The guy is always eating food raw, but that was for a bad
Yeah.
reason. He was a thief. He was always on the run, so he never could stick around long enough for his food to be cooked.
Oh.
That's the measurement of food being cooked for Shabbat. If you remember the laws of Shabbat like that. We don't share the same motivations. Page 342. So if we talked about where you cut it and how you cut it, now we're going to talk about how big of a slice should you cut. Remember, we had the discussion in the original paragraph of Maran Rama. Let's do page 342. Shua pusa shebotzea. What is the size of the slice that you have to cut? Vav. Lo yivtza min hapat pusa ktana. You shouldn't cut from the bread a small slice. Mipnei shenira ketzar ayin. You look like you're being cheap, stingy with it. It's halakha yishon. Derech eretz. There are laws of derech eretz. People don't know that. You have to stay away from doing things that make you look bad. So you're being stingy with people. Also, when you are the other way around, sometimes there are people who look like they're animals when they eat.
Yeah.
Halakha requires a refinement from you. It's hard to codify that. Some of that is societal, some of that is objective. Yeah, but a person must be very in tune with this. Unfortunately, sometimes there are Jews who make a chilul Hashem because they don't know how to do these things properly. It's very important. A person should know. Sometimes you go to... Okay, I'll say it the other way around. When you have guests, for example, having guests is a liability. You can't host guests and micromanage everything they do in your house, which is why some people don't like to have guests, because guests trample all over your rules and they eat the things they're not supposed to eat and they touch on things that your whole family knows not to touch, but they do it. And sometimes it's very difficult.
Bust your
But I
valuables.
always tell people, so you don't have to have guests, but if you have guests, you must let them be themselves in your house. You could try. You could try to say like, in our house we don't break the windows. That's fair. But you can't say like, oh, don't touch the food on the counter. It's not for you. It's not nice. It's not, in my opinion, it's not nice. If you can't handle that, so then don't have guests. That's fine. I was once at somebody's house and they have a hard time washing. They had a guest that doesn't wash their dishes. They do something and they leave it on the counter expecting somebody will come and pick up after them. There's a simple solution for it. Make a part in your countertop when you have guests. Not every time you have it. When you have guests, put a stack of paper cups, a stack of paper plates, a stack of disposable. Just say, you want to have coffee? Here. You like to have cookies? Here. Use this stuff. That's what we have out for the guests. And then they'll throw it in the trash anyways. You don't have to get stuck washing somebody's dishes. But don't start lecturing your guests. Oh, you're so rude. You don't wash your dishes. That's not the way to have a guest. They're here for 2 days. Let them come in and go. Not everyone is able. Not everyone is able to do Shulchan Aruch. That's okay. We've spoken about that in the past. But when the hardest thing is to be dependent on somebody else and you realize how stingy they are. It's a very difficult thing. Whenever I travel with my own food. Not because of kashrut. You know me well enough to know that. I travel with my own food because 6 times out of 10, after Shabbat dinner is over, whatever, I go and eat in my room. It's hard. It's hard to be in a place where you see there's not enough food for all the guests, or people are just stingy each other, watching how much we have. I don't need it. I don't want to be dependent on somebody that much. I bring my own food. That way I don't have complaints on anybody.
You bring your own food to other people's homes?
They don't know that I have my own food. I keep it in my backpack.
So they'll ask why you don't share it.
They don't know it's there. But it's a very important one. I'm telling you, it's very important. No, you never get stuck in a situation where you don't have. We had here a Talmid Chacham. I'm not going to tell you who. Talmid Chacham was in the old days of Yerushalayim. He had just got engaged. He was just married, and his in-laws invited him to their house for Shabbat. It was like old Yerushalayim. Nobody had refrigerators. Nobody had. It was old school. So they invited him, and he saw by dinner. He was too nervous to eat. Everybody was. They were talking to him. He was too nervous. In the middle of the night, he wakes up, starving. Doesn't have what to eat. So he doesn't know what to do. And he decided he's going to sneak out into the kitchen and have some food. Now, in the kitchen, the way they did in Yerushalayim was they would open the window and they would keep all the food in the windowsill. That way, at least it stayed colder than in the house. That was what they did. And so he decided to put on his robe and, go into the kitchen and help himself to some of the food that was left over from dinner. As he's loading the plate, suddenly something whacks him in the head. Someone hits him with a stick. So he's getting beaten up. He's screaming. All of a sudden, they notice that it's him. It turns out that everybody thought it was a raccoon or some kind of, I don't know what animal you're trying. Something came into the window to eat the food, so he started throwing things to scare the animal out of the kitchen. Wow. It turns out it was their son-in-law. Poor guy was pelted with things on the floor. And he realized from then it's important to eat by dinner time, because sometimes in the middle of the night it's dangerous to go eat something at the host window refrigerator. This is all part of Derech Eretz. A person should know. You're a guest at somebody's house, don't stay for so long. It's a good thing to go. It's a good thing to... In 3 days, it's time to leave. Go rent a hotel room. Today you have an Airbnb, VRBO, you got Motel 6. Just get out of people's hair already. Some people don't know. You can see they struggle. You see husband and wife, they're struggling between the shalom bayit. One wants to be nice, the other one is not feeling it. And sometimes you become a problem. Remember the Kehillat says this. Just sometimes you know when to pack your stuff and go.
So it's a bug on your collar, Rabbi.
Right.
Where is it?
I think it's gone
now.
There it is.
This is my same friend from before. So must have something to do with
I
this.
thought it was my behind you. So.
Yeah.
Must want 2 whole loaves of bread,
Well, he...
Yeah.
Okay.
not the crumbs.
If you're in a situation where you can't leave someone's house, sometimes it happens too. So then you can go out of your way to make the situation better. It depends how much money you have, of course. You can go shopping and buy food every day for the family, fill up the refrigerator with extra stuff. Meaning, make it seem that you're not here as a free rider. And sometimes that solves the problem on its own. Sometimes the people in the house that are feeling a little, why is he here, why is that? You already solved the problem by spend as much time as you can outside of the house. Leave in the morning, come back at night. There are ways. What does it say? The Mossad has a pasuk on their logo. The Mossad, Israeli intelligence. It says, "Ki b'tachbulot ta'aseh milchama." You'll win the war through trickery. through many different avenues. With Hakadosh Orchim, you have to know how to be, how to approach things with many different angles. You have to know how to do that. But you should make sure that you cut the piece at least an olive size. It's not so hard. It's very hard to cut pieces of bread that are smaller than an olive. Don't start wasting my time here with how big is an olive? What is an olive? No, you know what an olive is. You shouldn't cut a piece of bread that's bigger than an egg size. Because you appear like a glutton. When I got married, we started cutting chalot. You probably remember in the early days. My wife always looking at cutting the bread. And I insist on cutting the slices in half. She's like, why? It looks like you're being stingy with people. I'm not stingy. I don't want people to be holding big pieces of bread and eating from them. But on Shabbat you can cut a bigger piece. Oh, look at that. Because you only do that on Shabbat, it looks like people know that you're doing that in honor of Shabbat. On page 343, V'af b'chol, even on weekdays, haynu dafka k'shochel levado. These halachot apply only when you're eating on your own. O shochel im achrim, or you're eating with other people. V'yesh lekol echad lechem levado, and everybody has their own bread. Aval ba'al habayit shochel im achrim, but if you're the host and you're eating with other people, with guests, v'tzarich livtzoa v'letet lahem lekol echad mehem, and you have to give everybody their own bread. Yesh omrim sheiftzah prusa gdola, b'ofen shechol letet mehem lekol echad mehem. Some say you should cut big pieces to give to everybody. From a big piece to give to everybody. Let me explain. Sometimes you go to a meal and everybody has their own roll on their plate. Everyone has their own roll on their plate. It doesn't make a difference how big or small you cut your bread. That's up to you. But when everyone is dependent on your loaf of bread, you don't want to look like you're cutting half because you want to keep the other half for tomorrow. Yeah? V'im efshar hadavar, and if it's possible, yiten min haprusa. You should give an olive-sized amount of bread to every one of the people who are at your table. And if it's impossible, because either the bread is too small or whatever reason. You should give more bread from the rest of the bread that's in front of you. It doesn't have to be from the original loaf. But you keep cutting chalot, you put bread out on the table that everyone can take for themselves. And once you say hamotzi, you have to eat at least an olive amount of bread in order for you to be able to say Birkat Hamazon. And if you made the blessing of Al Netilat Yadayim, remember there's a question about if you're not going to eat an egg size of bread, whether you should say the blessing. You wash your hands. Whether you should say the blessing, wash your hands. Once you say a blessing, wash your hands, practically you have to eat a kibitzah. You have to eat an egg amount of bread. So have that in mind. You can't, I see a lot of times by Hamotzi on Shabbat, people taste the bread and they don't eat anymore. That is a problem in halakha. V'tov shuchal kazayit pat melech habracha, and it's better for you to be able to eat the bread right away after Hamotzi. And don't wait till later in the meal. We learned in the Mishnah that over bread one recites Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, who brings forth bread from the earth. Do you see where I am in Safariya? Have it, Rafael? Did you get the link?
I went Talmud Brahat. It goes to 63 though instead of 38.
Yeah, so we'll click on the top photo.
Did you get the link in the classroom?
Oh, but it's hard to go back and forth.
Okay, if you're in Safariya, are you in, where are you up
Yes,
to in
sorry, 38A.
38A, so you just scroll down almost till it becomes 38B.
Oh, yeah.
And it says, we learned the Mishnah that over bread.
Thank you.
Baruch, you see it over there?
Yeah,
I got it.
Okay.
If you don't find it,
Dan?
I can help.
Yeah.
Okay. We learned in the Mishnah that over bread one recites who brings forth bread from the earth. The sages taught, the Chachamim and Abreda, what does one who eats bread recite before eating? So the answer is, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, who brings forth bread from the earth. Rabbi Nechemiah says that the blessing is phrased, who brought forth bread from the earth, meaning motzi lechem min haaretz. You know, it's interesting, in the Ashkenazi community, a lot of people say the motzi blessing. Yeah, or say hamotzi. Really, they're just translating. Hamotzi means the motzi. But there actually is an argument whether the blessing is hamotzi lechem min haaretz or motzi lechem min haaretz. I always wondered if someone actually was referring to this older war and nobody knows about it. Rabbi Nechemiah says, who brought forth motzi lechem min haaretz. Rava said, everyone agrees that the term motzi means brought in the past tense, meaning who brought forth bread from the earth. Correct? As it is written, Hashem who brought them forth, motzi'am, from Egypt, Mitzrayim. When do they disagree? With regard to the term hamotzi, as the rabbis hold that hamotzi means that God brought forth in the past tense. It is written, who brought forth hamotzi, from you water from a rock of flint, which depicts a past event. Rabbi Nechemiah though holds that the term hamotzi means that God brings forth in the present tense. I mean, they're arguing, everyone knows motzi lechem min haaretz is past tense, who brought bread out from the earth. The argument is when you add a hey, does the hey change the tense from past tense to present tense, or does it stay in present tense and only adds the word the? The rabbis and Rabbi Nechemiah are in an argument about this. Since in that context hamotzi is used with regard to an event transpiring in the present, or possibly even one that will transpire in the future, it is inappropriate to include this term in a blessing referencing the past. So Rabbi Nechemiah brings a proof text that hamotzi is actually a future event, in which case he has an answer. Meaning he's saying, rabbis, you're mistaken in your Hebrew grammar. Hamotzi is the incorrect blessing. It's about a future, and he shows you where in Tanakh it says hamotzi otherwise. Let's look at the next paragraph. So how do the rabbis respond to that proof? The sages interpret that verse to mean that the Holy One, blessed be He, said to Israel as follows: when I will bring you forth, I will perform something for you that you will know that I am the one who brought you forth from Egypt. As is written, and you will know that I am the Lord your God who brought you forth. And therefore, in this verse too, hamotzi refers to the past. What do the rabbis answer Rabbi Nechemiah? Rabbi Nechemiah says, Chevre, Hashem says, hamotzi etchem, who will take you out of Egypt. No, said the rabbi, that's not what it means. When I do this event in the future, you will then realize, hamotzi, that I was the one who brought you out of Egypt. In which case, according to Chamim, is hamotzi present tense or past tense? Past tense, and therefore it works. Rabbi Nechemiah has to respond to that. But the rabbis are responding to Rabbi Nechemiah. On that note, the Gemara relates, the sages would praise the son of Rav Zevid, brother of Rabbi Shmuel bar Rav Zevid, to Rabbi Zeira. To Rabbi Zera. That he is a great man and he is expert in blessings. So they would always speak fondly about him, that he was an expert in blessings. This man was a great man, was an expert in blessings. Rabbi Zera said to the sages, when he comes to you, bring him to me so that I can meet him. You know, like this guy they always talk about? I want to meet him one day. So next time he's in your house, bring him over. One day he happened to come before him. They brought out bread to the guest. He began and recited, who brought forth bread from the earth. Motzi lechem min haaretz, not hamotzi. Rabbi Zera grew annoyed and said, this is he, of whom they say that he is a great man and expert in blessings? Granted, had he recited hamotzi, go to the next page, I would have understood that he thereby taught us the meaning of the verse, who brought you forth from Egypt, and he thereby taught us the halachas in accordance with the opinions of the chachamim, with the rabbis. However, what did he teach us by reciting motzi? Everyone agrees that one fulfills his obligation reciting motzi. Meaning, if he would have said hamotzi lechem min haaretz, he would say, oh, I've now made a decision between chachamim and Rabbi Nechemiah. The chachamim agree that if you say the blessing motzi lechem min haaretz, there's nothing wrong with that. Motzi is past tense. The only blessing that is problematic is the blessing of hamotzi, because according to Rabbi Nechemiah, that's a future tense. He said, so if this expert would come here and say hamotzi, so he would have taught us something. But the fact that he stayed safe and only said motzi didn't help us at all. Who needs him? So what's the answer? However, the Gemara explains the son of Rav Zevi did this in order to preclude himself from taking sides in the dispute. He didn't want to get involved. He didn't want it. Meaning, motzi, hamotzi, you rabbis fight about it. He preferred to phrase his blessing in a manner appropriate according to all opinions. rather than teach a novel concept which is not universally accepted. How's that? V'hilchata. The Gemara says, so who's the halacha like? Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. The halacha is we say hamotzi lechem min haaretz. The kaimalan the Rabbanan, the amri dafik mashma. Because we're ruling like the Rabbanan, they're the majority, and we rule like them. So now that you know this argument, look back in your Shulchan Aruch on page 344. What does Maran rule? Yivarech, you should say hamotzi lechem min haaretz with a hey. We don't know why Maran says this, unless you understand there's a war behind this. There's an argument among the Chachamim. But Maran is ruling like the Rambam, like everyone else that rules like the Gemara, which says that the proper blessing is hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Even though motzi would satisfy all opinions, we rule like the majority, like the Chachamim. What about Rabbi Nechemiah? Rabbi Nechemiah had to accept the ruling of the Chachamim. That's an interesting question, by the way. Not a question I'm going to answer today. Whether a rabbi like Rabbi Nechemiah, did he have to give in and say hamotzi, or was he allowed to maintain his own autonomous opinion because he disagreed with the rabbis? That's a question that we've not discussed here, but the Mefarshim discussed these questions. When you see an argument among the rabbis, did one rabbi continue doing things? Because on one hand, you're telling him to oppress his truth because of majority. On the other hand, there is a law that the majority rules. So what happens? Practically, what happens when there are some opinions that argue with Chachamim? Do the individual Chachamim maintain their independence, or do they ultimately give in? They maintain their opinion, but they, in action, ultimately give in to the rest. That's a great conversation. It could also help us understand a little of what goes on in the world of Jewish politics today. And what's the right attitude? Should you have your own opinion but do what everybody else does? Or should you do what you believe is right and who cares what everybody else does? Not that it's a direct correlation, because obviously the Chachamim of then, their numbers matter. The numbers of Chachamim sitting on a Sanhedrin matter. Rabbis that don't sit on a Sanhedrin, it doesn't really make a difference for us.
Isn't there a question about setting a model example in front of people who expect you to do the right thing? Not that it's wrong to do it, but people think the way you're doing it is the way it should be done.
Explain that properly. I mean, like,
So
specifically.
So if you say hamotzi, if you say motzi instead of hamotzi, because you think you're right and you're a rabbi and you know you disagree with hamotzi, you still say motzi. Will that give the impression to people who don't know what the right one to use is, that motzi is the right one?
Correct. I think that in a world where people are conscious that there are different opinions, you'll know, like, oh, of course, at Kehillat HaShamayim they make a blessing before they wash their hands. Everybody knows that. Even those who don't do it, they know that. So who's going to confuse? The newcomers. Are we concerned so much with that? It's an interesting question. How far do I go out of my way to take ignoramuses into consideration?
Well, I mean, the future. I mean, you know, you want them to learn the right thing, the right way to say it.
So you're saying you should do the proper thing so that to educate the next generation forward? Yeah, that's probably...
Yeah.
You know where you find this? You find this with Rabban Gamliel. Remember Masechet Brachot, the first Mishnah in the Talmud, where there's the idea of saying Shema, and the rabbis say you can only say Shema till midnight, and he holds you to say Shema till the morning, and comes his sons come home and say, we forgot to say the Shema, so you could say it till the morning. Why? Because really, even the rabbis who disagree with us agree with us. They're simply he said there's a way to circumvent the ruling of the majority if you know that the majority would really agree with you as well. That's one of the hints already how we deal with that situation. Let's look at the two halachot in the bottom. 344. Mevarech al apat hamotzi lechem min haaretz. You make a blessing on the bread. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Oh, sorry, I didn't know Maran. Let's move on. Yivarech hamotzi lechem min haaretz. You make a blessing on hamotzi lechem min haaretz. It says the Ramah Haggah. V'im rabim mesubim. Yikavnu that if there are many people sitting together, yichavnu libam nishma bracha v'yanu amen. They should listen to the host bracha and say amen. V'amvarech yichaven la'amen she'omrim. And the mevarech, the one who blesses, should have in mind their amen. That's an interesting sentence. We know that they need your blessing, but why do you need their amen? We're going to talk about that probably next week. V'iten revach ben lechem uven min. And you should make a break between hamotzi lechem min, because you want to make sure you get both mims in. Yeah? You don't want to say hamotzi lechem min. That's one mim. If you look on our Siddur has actually arrows telling you which letters you should keep separate from each other. All throughout the Siddur. The mems, the nuns, the whatever. When one word ends with the same letter as the next word starts, there'll always be a little reminder there. It's a good thing to practice them. But we do this the opposite way. Sometimes when we have to make a bracha, I can't tell you situations where we do this, but wherever we need to make a bracha that we know you can't make, but we need to be under the illusion as if we made that bracha. That's what we do. Baruch atah Adonai. I didn't say Hashem today. I said atah Adonai. Meaning the ah at the end of atah, I replaced, instead of saying the ah before Adon. In which case I didn't say Hashem today. The bracha that I said now is not Hashem.
That's the discount wedding special.
Yeah, so you did that underhandedly.
That's right. Nobody knows.
Yeah.
I didn't make a bracha.
Okay. I don't know. That's like it's creating a fiction.
It is great. It's exactly the purpose of that.
Yeah, I know.
It's necessary in some of those.
Yeah.
It really is necessary in some of those weddings you're telling us about.
I was once in a situation. I'll give you that's a heavy situation. A light situation in which this might be interesting. And
That's
then
when you do that, like if like the last minute the groom says, "Oh yeah, by the way, I'm a Cohen. Is there anything special I'm supposed
Yeah.
to do here before he marries his divorcee?" And 300
So I'll
guests
give you
are there.
a light example.
Yeah.
Light is, I was once invited to a minyan of Yom HaTzmaut evening services. Don't say names, because I'm not here. And they, in that particular place, they say Hallel at night on Yom HaTzmaut. Now, all of the service of the nighttime of Yom HaTzmaut clearly wasn't put together by somebody who truly understood the idea behind tefillah. I'm of that opinion. Rav Soloveitchik once said that the service stinks of amaratzus. It smells like ignorance, as Rav Soloveitchik said. Meaning, I'm a proud Zionist, I celebrate Yom HaTzmaut. I simply believe that the tefillah service doesn't have to be a copy and paste from the highlights of all the year-round services and then mushed together in the back of the Siddur. Just like you don't do that on any other holiday, you don't have to do that for Yom HaTzmaut either. But, okay, I'm such a minyan, who cares? It doesn't make a difference if I'm singing the Chadodit, the Tune of Hatikva. That's what makes everyone happy, doesn't make everyone happy. I was in a situation where they asked me to be the Chazan. And I said, sure. But I'm not comfortable saying a blessing on the Hallel at night. Because I say a blessing on Hallel in the morning, but not at night. I don't say, the only time I make a blessing on Hallel at night ever is on Pesach. When do you say Hallel aside from that at night? There's a special Hallel on Pesach night. And even there were wars about whether or not you could do that. So, before they proceeded to tell me then that I couldn't be the Chazan, I saw on their face that it was bothering them that I wasn't going to say a blessing. So I decided at that point I would say a blessing. And I would do this trick. I would say Atah Adonai without saying it. Nobody would know that I didn't make the blessing, and they want to make a blessing, it's on their head. But they disqualify me anyways from being the Chazan because of that. But that was my strategy, was to get away by doing that.
But you're still giving out the impression that it's okay to do, even because you think.
What can you do?
Wait, I mean, yeah. I understand.
So clearly I was in a situation where even the rabbis who were present were not willing to recognize that my concern was saying a blessing in vain, which would be one of the 10 Commandments. Instead of interpreting that as my not being Zionistic and for not being, they decided to interpret it as like, oh, we can't have him as the Chazan, we've got to find somebody else. Normally you would think that among, where do we have this? For example, Megillat Esther, in the morning of Megillat Esther. The custom among the Ashkenazim is to make a blessing of Shechianu, both the nighttime Megillah and the daytime Megillah. The custom of the Sfaradim, we only make a Shechianu at night, and that covers the whole Puri. Because of that, I know that there are Ashkenazim who they wish to make a Shechianu. I don't consider that a violation of Jewish law. That's for them, that's their minhag. What we have is an Ashkenazi person who stands up and makes the Shechianu on behalf. So I make a little pause between my blessing and the reading of the Megillah for the Ashkenazim to make a shechina. What's the big deal? You would think that when you go somewhere with their Talmidei Chamim that they wouldn't mind a little bit of variations to accommodate however many people you could in that tzibur. But unfortunately, not everyone is familiar with halakha well enough to be able to accommodate such things. And I'm saying it's not their fault. I'm not judging them. Simply saying that in a perfect world, when you go to one place where there's a Talmidei Chacham, you could trust that you can explain yourself, and there's no. Rabbi Yosef once was under the chuppah and he was fighting with one of the Rosh Yeshiva. Like, I prefer that we didn't do this. And the Rosh Yeshiva argued with him, if you don't do this, I'm going to get all my students to leave the wedding. At the end, I spoke to the man who drove Rabbi Yosef home from that wedding. So Rabbi Yosef sat in the door and said, this man is an expert in the whole Talmud, but he's an absolute ignoramus when it comes to halakha. Meaning he bothered Rabbi Yosef that the rabbi couldn't wrap his head around that there may be a different way to approach this halachically. The rabbi couldn't comprehend it. He said he was so frustrated. Every Talmidei Chacham you speak with can understand. You do like this, you always get upset. Why did people ask Rabbi Yosef, that's for Sfaradim, but can Ashkenazim do this? Why are you asking a Sephardic rabbi what Ashkenazim can do? You do this Rabbi Yashiv too. Rabbi Yashiv, what about for Sfaradim? Rabbi Yashiv, no, Sfaradim shouldn't do that. Why not? If you're assuming that someone is Talmidei Chacham, you're assuming that he'll be honest in his halachic rulings, and Rabbi Yosef will tell you when there's potentially a problem for Ashkenazim, just like you would hope to trust Moshe Feinstein or Rabbi Yashiv that they would tell you the answer for Sfaradim would be different. It's actually a strange world when you can't trust that. We'll continue on Monday night.